Welcome to the Mr. Beacon podcast. It's a really special episode this week. I'm going to be talking to Thomas Konote, who is the chair of a group called JTC24. Who are they? Well, they are a large group of experts that are defining the European Union's standard for digital product passports. And if you've watched any of the episodes over the last decade, you'll know that I'm always enthusiastic about our guests. And frankly, if I wasn't enthusiastic about them, I wouldn't be inviting them on. And on the rare occasion when I have had someone on that I felt like was not worthy of your time, then we don't put that episode out. And believe it or not, people do ask to come on the show, and sometimes we say no, it doesn't feel good. But this time I reached out to Thomas and invited him onto the podcast, and he said yes, which is pretty awesome. It's an exclusive. He's never done a podcast interview before, and it turns out the nature of standards is such that there aren't any other people that are allowed to talk in the level of detail that Thomas does about the forthcoming standards. And that's not a precious thing. It's not a kind of trying to be exclusive thing. It's simply when standards are in flux, there's big stakes commercially. So Thomas is going to guide us through digital product passports, the standard, what it is, when it's coming, who's been working on it, why it's important, how it's going to work, and when we expect the different parts to come online. So I think it's going to be really useful. And when I think about the best episodes of the Mr. Beacon podcast, they're ones where I'm learning something and I feel like that something is valuable to other people. And this is definitely one of those episodes. This year, February, I left Wiliot, which was a really tough decision. Wiliot's an amazing company. There's a ton of episodes on battery-free Bluetooth and all the things that it's doing. But the reason I did it was that I saw this opportunity to build a company that has something to offer in terms of bringing AI and applying it to the regular things like food, medicine, clothing in the physical world. And digital product passports are a key part of that. This whole podcast series started as a follow-up to a book I wrote called Beacon Technologies, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Becosystem, which was a way of capturing everything I thought people would need to know about digital to physical convergence and the use of Bluetooth beacons to make that happen. Well, it turned out there was something missing, and I believe that missing thing is the digital product passport. And it's a great name for something. I was actually explaining this to my 80-year-old mother earlier today, and it may sound reductive or simplistic, but all of us that travel have a passport. And the words digital product passport have existed. But really, up until now, if you were a product, you could travel around the world without a passport. That is about to change. So just like real passports, products will need a digital product passport. And what do those things do? Well, as the name suggests, as the human passports do, it tells you who you are and it proves it. It's a certificate of authentication, but it also shows where you've come from. And if you look at the stamps, you can track the path that it took to get there. And it turns out that is super useful if you're trying to make sure that what you've got is a quality product, that it's going to be good for the planet, that it's going to be good for you. So this is an idea whose time has come. It's going to open up massive commercial opportunities because it's a standard that is tied to regulation that mandates its use. So often when standards get created, they never see the light of day, but this one will, because if you're going to sell batteries or clothing or toys, and a bunch of other things to come by, you're going to have to use it. So sounds like a simple concept. Turns out that on one level it is, another level it is not, and that makes it interesting. So, the best guests for me are ones where we learn from them, that they really know what they're talking about, that they are the definitive source of knowledge, which Thomas is. He's a university professor, and he's literally writing the standards, the rules of the road, along with several hundred other people who are also experts. But the other thing that I love about our very best guests is hearing them answer the question, what three songs have meaning for you and why? And it's something we use as a warm-up exercise. We do it first, we cut and paste it, put it at the end. You don't have to listen to it. But it's probably the most fun part of the show, and Thomas's choice is absolutely no exception. And one of the reasons I love that part of the show is it helps me get to know the real person behind the technology. And very often, we're using things, and I, for one, wonder, what were the people like that started this company, that created this technology? And we've got an opportunity with this episode to find out. So, enough hype. Here's the conversation. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Well, Thomas, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. You are at the center of what I think is an incredibly important part of technology and business landscape, as you are the chair of JTC 24, this group that's working on digital product passports. But perhaps we could kick this discussion off, and there's a lot of detailed things for us to get into, but can you set the scene and just explain to people what JTC 24 is, and maybe even what a digital product passport is?
Yeah, at least digital product passport is digitized information about the product from several perspectives. One is what is inside the product, how it is made, and how it even behave during their use time. And this is the beauty of digitization, to see the evolvement of parts of the product, of the raw material, for instance, how it is made, until this come back into the circular economy perspectives. Means how to deal with reuse, with repair, how this went into recycling. And that's really important for our economy, at least, because we cannot live anymore with a linear economy as we have today. And this is very much important, not only for Europe, because the JTC 24 is an artifact coming from Europe. It's as well relevant for all over the world. And of course, the most important products which are related to that are all the ones where we have a lot of value, where we have the problem in Europe to not have raw material for that. So we have to source somewhere. And you can see in the developments in the world, it's very important to become more independent from other sources. So for Europe, it's really extremely relevant to keep raw material into the circle.
Yes.
This is rare material. For instance, I'm very much engaged in the development of the battery passport. And so the batteries are not, it is not an exception or not a surprise that the batteries are the first who needs mandatory passport from February 2027. Because
Yes.
this is a very important part of our mobility on the one hand, and on the other hand, we do not have the raw material exactly for the batteries in Europe.
Yes.
And So this passport is an instrument, is a glue between the production, the use, and the R strategies, reuse and recycling and all these things. Yeah, because it's very important to know what's happened with that. Can I reuse already used car battery for the energy storage for your solar energy, for instance? Yeah.
Yes.
And so this is at least the missing link. Very much from the beginning, it was very clear for in Europe to have at least two major components of the digital product passport. The one is the data specifications, because there is a need for having standardized data in order to be comparable and all these things. And on the other hand, it's the system, means the technical system, how to store, how to access. You can imagine, yeah, there's sensitive information in for instance, a battery passport. Yeah, and it is for sure important that only persons have access to this information, which are granted for that. So so we have a lot of technical issues to standardize, because in Europe there is a decision to have just one DPP system in total, but several different data specifications related to the different product groups. So this is the separation we have in Europe, that at least for each product group, for batteries, for construction materials, we have specific specifications, but only one system, so we can allow interoperability. You can imagine in a car you have textile and batteries and tires. So, but at the end, it has to be a product passport for the entire car. So all these different product groups have to come together as well. So, and this means we need one system and not several systems for each product group. So, and the next good news from Europe, because normally it's very popular to blame and to blame our authorities in Europe, for over bureaucracy and all these things.
Yes.
The European Commission is always blamed. It is very popular to blame them. But I think they made very, very good decisions to have this separation.
Yes.
And the second very good decision is to have a decentralized system. This means the data management of all the passport data are belonging to the, so to speak, economic operators. The economic operator is the one who bring a product into the market. And they decide how to store and how to manage all the data. This is one part of the technical system. And of course, there is a need for having some standardization so that you have the opportunity for interoperability. So then we have as well another system component. This is a registry. So this means every product, or let me say a model or a batch, has to be registered in a central storage of the European Commission, but just by having identifiers for that. So this means we have a centralized registry of the products, but this has to be interconnected with the decentralized data storage, where the real data of the product is at least stored and managed. So then we have a third component. This is a backup system, which has to be operated by a third-party provider. This is needed to have product passports available, even the original economic operator disappears. So that we can keep the data somewhere.
Yes.
These three components have to interoperate, you can imagine. And there is the need to access, for instance, for a repair, in order to change data, for instance. This entire system is quite complex. So this is very new for Europe, and even for standardization, for performing this kind of standardization, because this is needed. So, and in Europe, we have this kind of regulatory demand because we have the ESPR, the eco design.
And just spell out a little bit, what is ESPR?
ESPR is a regulation. This is the eco design regulation for sustainable products. This is quite new, and this is at least I would say, one of the major implementing part for the new Green Deal of European Commission, which is very much attacked by a lot of people and very much, let me say, delighted by a lot of people. But anyhow, this ESPR is one of the major regulations. So, and the digital product passport is at least one of the major instruments for the implementation.
Yes.
But this is the typical thing we are starting normally with regulation. So we are hiding behind regulation. This is really boring for me because I'm a researcher. I'm a scientist. Yeah, I don't like to be to perform research behind a regulation. This is really not satisfying. So, and this is really an issue we have in Europe very much, that on the one hand, we hate regulation and over-regulation and bureaucracy. And on the other hand, we are sticking to that. That's really boring for me. But the good news is that this digital product passport is, from my perspective, a business enabler. And a very, very strong business enabler. And I'm working in this environment for, let me say, especially the battery since 6-7 years. Yeah. So we started the circular battery process and all these things. And in the beginning, we were very much sticking to the upcoming regulations, but now step by step, because I'm involved as well in the implementation of battery passport in large OEM, I see the beauty for the business, the beauty for solving issues we try to solve since decades.
And can you give some examples of
Yes.
the problems that you see being solved specifically for batteries? And then we can talk about other domains like clothing and so forth later.
So the business problems, especially in large companies, you have always the silo problem between production, marketing, and product management, especially in large companies, because the one say, okay, you have to do this in this way. The other say, oh, I cannot do. And this third one is saying, oh, your unique selling points are the wrong ones. So, and they always blame each other. The good news with these product passports, you know what's happened with your product after you sold. So you can purely see what's really happened. So you can, so it is at least a missing glue from the information perspective between production, product management, and marketing. So, and by the way, it's a very good instrument, for instance, for advertising or the cross-selling issues.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I can imagine a world where you don't buy a car battery, you subscribe to the car battery service. You say, I really like this car battery, and you get your first one, and then, it lives its life for however long. It's 8 years. And then because it's connected, then you can start to see that there are problems and you can get a replacement. And then the old one goes back and it gets broken down and gets turned into a new battery by the manufacturer. So the battery, suddenly this manufacturer is retaining their customer. The customer doesn't need to, worry about this. They're maybe just paying an annual fee for battery, and they'll have batteries for as long as they need batteries. There's so many. This can completely change retail. It can completely change consumer packaged goods. And obviously, it can be amazing for the environment because, you move away from disposable products to ones that are built with quality and have a long life.
Yeah. And this is at least one instrument as a glue between the different processes and departments in a company, which is missing today very often.
Yes. Yes.
That's really nice. So as well, my experiences in implementing battery passport gives you another idea, because in the battery passport, at least you have all the core data you need for running a company.
Yes.
It's about the supply chain data. It's about the link to the production planning control. It is a link then to the sales data, or let me say to the use. At least this is the core of your company, at least. So, and
Yes.
this means if you are able to manage this in the right way, then you don't need a lot of other software in your zoo. This means this is a good instrument for putting out a lot of animals in your software zoo.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so this is an improvement potential for leaner software systems, for instance.
One of the things that I think is super interesting about this is privacy and data ownership.
Yes.
So, in the past, if I made a car battery, I would probably know who I was selling it to, the major distributor, but I might not know who the dealer is, assuming this is kind of a third, it's not going straight into a car. So does this mean that the OEMs, the manufacturers of the car batteries, will know everything about what's happened downstream, who the different, the chain of custody, or will they be, because it sounds like they will have the obligation to host this data, that they will be kind of on the hook to host it. Will they be hosting? Will they see everything, or will they be hosting data that they can't even access?
Yes, at least this is a very, very important question. And this is still under discussion to some extent, how to provide data sovereignty. Because there are so many dependencies. So we do have dependencies on law. For instance, privacy. It's for sure that the company should not know what the customer is really doing currently, and all these things. So that's really important to make sure that there is not an let me say monitoring of the customer, but we need the monitoring of the battery. So this is one part we have to solve. We have to solve, and there are these approaches. At least this is the same with the chain of custody. To some extent, in some business environments, it is not a problem that the OEM knows everything about the supplier of my supplier.
Mm-hmm.
In other environments, it's the other way around. So, and this means we have to foresee in our system specification that both is possible. On the one hand, it's for sure that it's important that you as a supplier can hide specific information of my suppliers to my customer. And in other environments, it is the other way around, because this is part of their economy. Because if everyone can share the data, then at least the processes are much more cheaper. So they should use this opportunity if they trust each other. So, and this means we have to allow both options for making business. And this is at least a challenge in our specifications for the standards to have it. Because if you have just one configuration, then it's quite easy to set the standards for that. But here, as I mentioned, the DPP system, where we are standardizing in the JTC 24, because this is our focus, we have to foresee at least the application for all product groups. This is except food, animal food, and pharmaceutical products. And at the same time, we have to allow different models for supply networks and supply chains. So this is a challenge we have to foresee in a system specification.
A few questions. So it seems like this ability to trace food is so important and so valuable. Why is food not in the scope?
I'm not quite sure, because I never ask the European Commission, because Yes, I just fulfill the standardization request. But my impression is it's purely because of circularity. Because in food and animal food, you have no issue of circularity. That's a pure
Yeah,
issue.
well, that's true.
So
But you definitely have issues with traceability, don't you? And
yes,
so, I'm very involved, or I'm quite involved, active in the FDA FSMA 204 food traceability
yeah,
efforts over here, which are different, but they are kind of maybe a cousin of what you're doing. And
yes.
um, uh, yeah,
This is quite true. That especially for food, the traceability is very important.
yes,
And but for that, there exist other system specifications. Yeah, because
yes,
for food, it's not so important to know what has happened after the customer bought this. So, and this is at least one part why I guess the food and animal foods are out of scope for the digital product passport. But for sure, there exist other regulations already. So because, for instance, we have tobacco regulation in Europe, which is dealing
tobacco,
already
yeah,
with all the steps in the in the
interesting,
supply chain in the value chain of tobacco.
yes,
Um,
yeah.
and yes, the major reason is just to ensure the tax in that regulation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And we have. I live in California, so cannabis is legal, in as it is in many states, and so they have amazing traceability systems there. So I want to. So to me, the benefits are huge. I can imagine it ultimately cutting the cost of goods, and certainly, for anyone that cares about who produced my food, or sorry, my clothing, is slave labor involved? What's the quality? Is this the real thing? So many benefits. What if my business is stealing car batteries and reselling them? Is this going to be a problem for me as a criminal? Is this going to get in the way of my criminal business?
So the digital product passport is a very good instrument for at least protecting from stealing. And this is already
Yes.
applied without any regulation, but not for batteries, but for bicycle gears. I'm not quite sure if you have a bicycle in your garage. I don't know.
I have several. I'm a keen bicycler. I read this book by Mike Berners-Lee, the famous
Ah,
climate
yes.
scientist, and he said the best thing you can do, or one of the best things one of the many things that you can do to cut your carbon footprint, is to get an electric bike. And so I did it, and I'm happier and lighter as a result. So I have two electric bikes.
Yeah, I have no electric bike yet. But last year, also on the other hand, and every year I perform some bike trips with my brothers,
Oh,
several
okay.
days, something like that. And last year we decided to have a trip over the Alps. Means starting in Munich in southern Germany, is really the opposite of Hamburg, and then go over the Alps to Verona in Italy. So. And my bike, as a normal trekking bike, had a very normal 7 gears acceleration at least. Just very, this is a Shimano something, So, but of course, this internal one is not based on a chain. It's really the internal gearbox inside the second wheel. This was by far not feasible to go over the mountains. So I decided to buy a very let me say advanced gearbox system with 14 gears internally. And this is a very, very let me say famous and by the way very expensive one coming from Rohloff. It's a hidden champion, a typical
Hmm.
hidden champion from Germany. And when I bought this and made all the assembly and all these things, I discovered they had a digital product passport. And just for the reason of stealing. Yeah, because this kind
Interesting.
of gearbox needs every year maintenance, and this needs maintenance by professionals. So this means if you go to the after a year to a professional repair station in order to perform some maintenance, then you have to show that it's your gearbox at least. Without that, this is not allowed to do anything. So
Okay.
with this digital product passport, it is at least an assurance that this kind of bikes with this box cannot be stolen so easy. So this means this is already an instrument without having the regulation in place. So that's, from my perspective, this is one of the 1,000 and more benefits of having digital product passports.
I agree. And if we think about it, counterfeit and theft and all of these things are really attacks on the economy and attacks on people that do stick to the rules. So definitely a good thing in my book, at least. So I do want to clarify a few things and also get to who this impacts and when and so forth. But before we go into some of the more technical details, in terms of the roles and responsibilities, so you talked about who has to maintain the database and the fact that it's distributed. So if I am a clothing manufacturer, let's say I'm Zara, for instance, I don't actually make a lot of the clothes. I subcontract it to companies in Vietnam and China and that sort of thing. I assume it's not the Vietnamese and the Chinese manufacturer that is having to maintain the digital product passport. It's actually Zara, the brand whose name is on it. How is that being? Who's on the hook?
Yeah, at least this is a term which is very much bureaucratic. This is these, so to speak, economic operator. So I think this was just invented for this digital product passport in the EU. This is the one who brings a product into the market.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the one. So, and they are obliged to perform the maintenance of the data. They are responsible for the data even after had sold the product. Yeah, that's very important.
Yes.
There is one responsibility, but this comes with a lot of problems. You can imagine you sell the product to a consumer, and then how to dictate to your consumer that they are updating data.
Yes.
Yeah. If something is happened, so there are a lot of at least forthcoming delegated acts and in these regulations, how to deal with that, how to allow. So this is quite complicated. This is one of the challenges we have. You can imagine this. We are having in European Union some priority on the products. So one is, of course, the battery for cars and e-bikes and even for industry batteries. And but we have as well a priority from the regulation perspective is now furniture. So this means you buy furniture from IKEA, and you as a consumer, you can do everything normally with that. You can change, you can cut, whatever. And the question is now how to update the data in the data space of the economic operator of IKEA. How to convince consumers to do that, and all these things. So that there is a lot of issues still to some extent open. Of course, we have now the issue of the repair and the recycling companies, so they can at least take it. But what is between? When you issue something on the market, you have a product there, until the recycling. Because normally you would like to, as a recycler, you would like to know in beforehand what kind of product come into my recycling company.
Yes.
So there are still some gaps. For some reasons, it is already, let me say, solved. For the battery, it's quite easy because normally no one, or you are not perform any maintenance on your car battery for the traction battery. Yeah, it would be much too dangerous.
Yes.
So you have at least contracted companies in between, so you can deal with that. So for that, there exist solutions how to deal with that, but for others not. And so this is still an elaboration. So that is, from my perspective, as well, very amazing how European Commission went into this risk, but went into an innovation path. And this is really exciting me, because normally when we are blaming European Commission, it's always the issue, they're too slow, old things and all these things. And here they're going into the risk, like the Asian,
I agree.
like China, Korea, and digest how far we can come. So from that perspective, I'm quite happy with it as a researcher, as a scientist. But
It's
of course,
amazing.
this is dangerous, and I hope our community, our society is mature for that. That there could be
I hope so
mistakes,
too.
that we have to adapt, to change, whatever. But from my perspective, it's the right direction.
Where do you go with there's some interesting use cases like on clothing. So I don't work for them anymore, but I used to work for this company called Williot, and they make these battery-free Bluetooth stickers. They're basically kind of the next generation of RFID.
Yes.
And we were looking at making these washable and including them in clothing. And it turns out, this has been a dream of the RAIN RFID folks for years, for decades, to have appliances be able to know, a fridge knows what's inside it, a washing machine knows what's being washed. But I think, your washing machine, if you bought one recently, probably has Bluetooth, probably has Wi-Fi. Those radios could very easily read a tag like this and start to keep track of how often you're washing something. And, why would that be useful? Well, if I'm going to resell my clothing, and I can say, look, I've only worn it a few times. It's only been through the wash like 3 times versus this other thing. It's been washed 300 times. Maybe that's interesting for the circular economy. Is that sort of information going to be stored in the digital product passport or not?
I'm not so familiar with textile, because textile is, of course, one of the major focused product groups you can imagine, based on the upstream supply chain and all these things, and all the problems we are creating, especially in Western countries. We are creating for Global South, for instance, especially this issue from both perspectives, from the upstream and downstream. And but here I have to say I'm not familiar with textile, because it's a very specific product group. So currently I do not know what kind of data points are related to that. So that's
Okay.
I cannot tell you more than. But of course, I know some companies who are implemented already digital product passports for textile.
Yes. Your co-chair of the Thomas
Röding, he's doing a lot with that, and I talk, of course, very recently, just today, with him, and of course he has very very nice and innovative ideas and how to use this for merchandising packages and all this. It's really crazy. I like this, because it's widen my horizon at least. So, but this is very much marketing oriented. The question is how the sustainability aspects come into the game. Of course, you can looking into the aspects of material, as you mentioned, with forced labor, child labor, and working conditions. Of course, there is something. What is the benefit from the sustainability perspective, even for the reuse and so on? That's for sure. But I do not have any more ideas, or let me say knowledge, about the data point for textile.
Give us a sense of the magnitude, the size of this standardization effort, because it must be huge. What you're doing is large. How many people are involved? How many groups And let's help people make sense of where it fits in, because I am trying to understand, is this an EU standard? Is it an ISO standard? Is it a United Nations standard? Or is it all of them?
Yeah. So maybe starting with the first thing. So because in the JTC 24, it's really a European CENELEC standardization body. We are just dealing with the DPP system, not with the data as we just discussed with textile or batteries or whatever. And they are working close to 400 experts in a time frame of just 2 years to create these standards in these, so to speak, 8 modules. And of course, even you are dividing by 8 modules, if every expert is just in one group, it's already huge groups. But of course, we have experts in 2 or 3 groups and modules and so on. So we have these 8 modules. They are distributed in total in 3 standardization groups. And we have one strategic advisory group, which is performing a lot of the work around that and doing the cross-cutting issues. So for European standardization, this is quite huge. Yeah. And of course, as you know, digital product passport is a really exciting instrument. Yeah, it's really electrifying a lot of people. I was not aware 3 years ago when we started with that. That's really the issue. So, and of course, there are a lot of particular interests. Yeah, because we are dealing with the unique identifiers, with the data carriers, as you have here with the RFIDs and so on. And at least every week I get a call from somewhere telling me, oh, I have a new NFC something, how I can bring my standard into your standardization group. So this is So this means, and we have large players try to make money out of that. And so you can imagine how strong is the competition in the different groups for the standardization. So I just participated today, and I will do this as well tomorrow to go really into the standardization discussion, because it is needed to know how they are behaving, because there's so a big business impact that of course they change behavior from very polite to be very aggressive. Yeah, that's for sure. And they try to trick, because in order to become in a position to have a unique selling points, because there's a so huge scale effect, at least. And this is on the one hand for a scientist is boring, but on the other hand, it's interesting how to deal with that, how to find consensus. This is quite interesting. And of course, you're in California. All the, let me say, behavioral disruptions we got in the last years, coming from top politics down to the business, to even small business. And you're coming from California. All the behavior of the Palo Alto, at least entrepreneurs. Yeah, they are really breaking rules. Some of them just breaking rules in the science, that's what this is very, very good, and I like to break rules in science, But of course, they break rules in society, in politics, and this not stops in US. This is happening in standardization as well, and of course, I can go to a corner and cry. Or I can deal with that, and this is quite interesting, because I had to do this today, and I will do this for tomorrow in order to keep our speed, because I'm not quite sure if you are familiar with standardization, but normally for very simple reasons, for very simple, let me say, standardization issues, you need normally 3 to 5 to 10 years in ISO. And we have just the time for more or less 1.5 years.
So what does you chair JTC 24?
Yes.
What does the JTC stand for? And I want to come back to this.
Yes.
Is there a relationship with ISO and the UN?
This is the next one. So JTC just stands for Joint Technical Committee. And this is we have this instrument not only in CEN, this is a European standardization body. This is as well an organization kind in all other standardization organizations like ISO. This is always happen when different sources come together. So, and we have in Europe the differentiation or the separation in standardization between CEN, this is at least everything, it could be toys, whatever. Then we have CENELEC, this is all the electrical issues. And we have ETSI, this is another European standardization body. This is dealing with all the communication issues with telephone and all these things. So these are the three ones. And here in this JTC, Joint Technical Committee, there's CEN and CENELEC together. So this is the reason why this is a Joint Technical Committee.
Okay.
And we have the mandate from the European Commission, because the European Commission sets these elaborated this regulations at least. This is the ESPR about the sustainable products. There is an extra regulation for the batteries. There's an extra regulation for critical raw material, and even an extra regulation about toys. Yeah. So, and based on that, the European Commission said, okay, now we need a digital product passport system. So, and they give a request, a standardization request to these standardization bodies. And these standardization bodies deliver these standards back to the European Commission. And the European Commission put this into, let me say, an entire box and publish this in their journal. So this becomes very important. It's still voluntary, but it is a standard demanded by the European Commission. So this is our mandate. And it is really more important because, as I mentioned, these standards will define how the different components of the digital product passport system, means the registry, the distributed data management, and the backup, work together. And there is, in our regulations, clearly defined, you can bring a product into the market only if you have it registered. Without a registration, forget it. You are not allowed.
Right.
You have to pay penalties and all these things. So this means if you are not comply with the technical standards for being able to register your products, you cannot bring your product into the market. Yeah.
Yeah. So you may be an American. So if I'm an American maker of furniture, say Steelcase, one of the largest makers of office furniture, if I want to sell office chairs and desks into anywhere in Europe, then I will need to basically comply with that standard. Will I need to host the data in Europe, or can I have my digital product passport in Michigan or wherever my headquarters is?
In total, it is for a manufacturer in Minnesota. He is at least not the economic operator, because there must be an importer with a host in Europe. So, and of course, how you store this is not defined. If the importer is storing with Amazon somewhere in UK or Ireland, is not an issue. But he has to provide the data and a backup so that you can always have an access. And there are some regulation how to deal with that. So, but this is just the issue on the European side. Of course, in our Europe economy, we are so dependent on entire value chains all over the world. So for sure, we need an alignment on a global level as well. This took us some time to discuss with the European Commission, with our government that we need this alignment. So, but now then they are in this game, yeah. So, and this means this is a reason why there are a lot of efforts done now how to realize the global alignment with that. So, and of course, this is not easy because there are already some existing standardization going on, and of course, in Asia there are some different opinions how to store data. Can you imagine the same as in US? You have as well different objectives. So in Europe we have the objective of circularity.
Yes.
And in US, the objective for the digital product passport is to identify where comes the product from.
Yes. Yeah. You want to avoid counterfeit products and
Yeah.
all that sort of thing
So,
that undermine your industry.
And this means there is a lot of, let me say, a lot of challenges how to perform the standardization on a global level. But there is no way
Yes.
out. We need this in order to allow global economy and global data flow. So what's happened now? There is now an ongoing activity to start a JTC, a Joint Technical Committee, under ISO level. This is now on the way.
Okay.
And you can imagine inside these digital product passports for the very different product groups, there exists already a lot of standardization. For instance, for the data carrier, yeah, as you mentioned, it's
Yes.
with
Yeah.
NFC or whatever. So this
Yes. Yeah,
new
yeah.
JTC will not at least let me say steal from other standardization groups all the parts into the digital product passport standardization. We will just deal with the core issues which are only relevant for the passports, but we will make an alignment with all the other standardization groups around the world, which are at least necessary to have a functional system. So this is currently in establishing, yeah. But this means, and of course, our work we had done in this JTC 24 in Europe is maybe beneficial for that ISO standards. I think what we can we can use here is at least the experience in Europe for that. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I'm the chair of that. So it's quite new, and we are taking standardization to some extent as an instrument for development. For that,
Yes.
standardization is not made for. But anyhow, we have to do, and I think it would be very nice to share opinions and experiences with that, in order to find a way how to allow easy data flow for global product passports. So there are as well
Yes.
some activities for global global South. This means with a UNEP program, for instance, and this will be very challenging from my perspective, yeah, because we have already activities all over the world. This is in IEEE, under UN, as you mentioned, with UNTP developments. And we are not only aware, we are participating to the recommendation 49 development and so on. And of course, there are different opinions and different, let me say, particular interests. Yeah, because as I mentioned in JTC 24, we have already a lot of contradicting and conflicting particular interests. This will not be disappear in a global perspective. But from my perspective, from my view, there is no way out. We have to go in this way, and this is our objective, and I support that from a science perspective, of course, and I'm looking forward to that because I'm very much interested from my view of interoperability, because this is my, let me say, scientific hobby horse. It's not a hobby horse. This is really a horse. There I see a lot of opportunities, and we will see. But I cannot predict today. But so this means, I guess we will come to suitable ISO standards in the next decade. That's for sure, because we need this in order to allow business and economy.
What is the schedule for all of this? This must be very challenging to keep track of, but when is all of this due to
Yeah.
require people to comply?
Yes. In Europe, we have the regulation as our, let me say, deadline. Yeah, and this is because there is a battery regulation. This went in force in August 2023. And we have in Europe a law saying, okay, after a regulation went into force, then we have 42 months to implement. And this means in February 2027, every battery for cars, every battery for light means of transportation, means your e-bikes, and every battery from the industry perspective with capacity more than 2 kilowatt watt hours have to have a passport. So in order to allow the implementation, we have to submit the technical standards end of this year. So we just started with the formation of this JTC 24 in the beginning of 2024. Yeah. So, and of course, in the first months, we had to organize ourselves. So at least we had just 1.5 years to create these, so to speak, harmonized standards. And for standardization, this is like go over water. This is like yesterday.
Yes, you're going at light speed.
Yes.
So if someone wants to learn more about these standards, and I certainly do, my the new startup is developing a AI agent that will basically eat digital product passports and hopefully, let give products a voice so that people can access some of this wonderful information without having to read a lot of small print. So how can I and all the other entrepreneurs learn more about the standards and where they are at the moment?
So in European standardization, you have some, let me say, regulations, how to hide and all these things. Yeah. So today, I'm not allowed to tell you more than I told you about how this is working and all these things. Even I'm the chair, so I have special conditions to talk about that. So all my experts have to completely silence to that. But anyhow, we will go to a public or more or less public inquiry in June, July this year, where we put the current set of drafts into the to the NSBs, to the national standardization bodies, and normally they open up and publish this in order to get feedback, comments, and so on. This means everyone more or less can see the standards, let me say, in July, August. So you can see what's happened with that. And of course, then we will take all the comments, work with them in October, and then send to the European Commission, because they have to harmonize them and then publish in end of this year at least. So this is the timeline. So
another question I had, I'm fascinated by this registry that you talked about, and maybe it was your metaphor or someone else. I'm a techie at heart, so this registry of the digital product passports is like the domain name service for the internet, that where you kind of take the IP address. Every laptop has an IP address, every phone has an IP address, every washing machine that's connected has an IP address, and you're basically linking that to a pointer to this data structure, the digital product passport. Is that a fair? Did I hear it right? Is that what you're thinking of? And will there just be one? There'll just be one registry that will cover, or will there be one for batteries, one for clothing, or one in each country? What's that going to be?
So there will be a centralized one. This is first one.
Yes.
And your anticipation is quite right. This is like a domain name server. So this means we
Yes.
do have at least a unique identifier, which is already embedded into an internet address, so that you can access from this registry directly to the passport data. Yeah. And there are as well some other identifications like the economic operator ID, the facility ID, and even a registry ID. So this is the only 4 IDs which are stored into the registry. Yeah, that's at least true. So it's, as you mentioned, this will be the part of the registry. And of course, there's some more. So because, for instance, we need standardized data catalogs, which are machine readable, so that it's clear, okay, for a certain product, these are the mandatory data catalogs, so that, for instance, market surveillance can have a look to the different passports. Are they complete, and are they eligible, and all these things. So that's as well part of the central system running under the roof of the European Commission. This means there will be no registries running under the different authorities of the different member states. It's really one. And to which extent we have then more than one registry, we will see, I think, after the first experiences made with the system.
Okay. And then, this backup, which I think is a fascinating concept, because I look at people's histories on LinkedIn, and 50% of the companies where they've worked don't exist anymore. And so, but, hopefully the products will continue to exist. If I have furniture in my house, I'm old, but there's furniture in my house that's older than me. So
it's fine.
How long will so I assume if I'm an economic operator and I'm doing well, but it's a little bit like in the technical world, you pay to have your code stored by a third party in escrow. So if I'm a small startup, I'm doing business with Amazon, they're going to be like, yeah, okay, this is great, but give me your code. I'll put it in escrow. I'll only access it if and when you go out of business. It seems sort of like a similar concept. You're like, you have a bank where this data can go, and if you go out of business, it will still exist. Is that roughly what it is? And there will be people who will go into the business of being a backup for apparel DPPs and battery DPPs.
So from our regulations perspective, I'm not allowed to tell you much more in detail how this works.
Okay.
But of course, yes, it is very much like this you explained. This means we will have as well some delegated acts how to choose the DPP service providers, like the backup providers, and how this is working on the, let me say, business side, and what are the requirements for the service provider, like the backup providers. But what we are doing is as well how to have this right, let me say, interconnection, the interoperability issue on that, but as well to allow different, let me say, business rules on that. You can imagine for furniture, the time for having the passport after it's sold is maybe different to the one for toys, to the ones for batteries. We have different rules. And so what we have to allow is at least to apply different rules in one system, based on the specific regulations for the products.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm going to wrap up soon because you've been gracious with your time. But one of the standards that I have become very interested in is the GS1 standards, and they have, and we have podcast episodes from people from GS1 talking more eloquently than I will. But there's the GTIN, which is the unique number that will identify either a class of product or even a specific product. And you have a digital link, which is kind of got a lot more information that could include pointers to images of the product and all sorts of useful stuff. And then you have EPCIS, the Electronic Product Code Interchange Standard, where the events of where this came from and how it's been treated and the temperature it was stored at, all of that can. How does what you're doing relate to these GS1 standards? That some of them are very well established, some less so, but still very good in my opinion.
Yeah. So of course, GS1 is a major player for different artifacts for the product passport. Yeah, unique identifiers, the data carriers. And of course, our approach in JTC 24 is an inclusivity approach. This means because we have a lot of business in retail where GS1 is established already. So it is really important to foresee this in order to avoid any change costs for the existing economy there. So we have as well other industries where there exist other standards for that. So this means our standards are more coming from the federated interoperability approach to allow this inclusivity. So this means that we have coexistence of standards. It means that GS1 standards can be applied next to other standards, mainly coming from ISO, IEC, and so on already. So we have some priorities. This means international standards first, but anyhow, other standards are welcomed as much as possible because we have to have this inclusion to follow. Yeah, because if not, we will fail, because then we would create a lot of cost to the industry. Yeah, and this means our approach is to allow existing standards here as much as possible. Maybe to make one specification or limitation, because the DPP system in JTC 24 is not foreseeing any traceability system for that. In European Commission, we separate this, and this is a very good reason to not combine both. Means the traceability of the supply chain with their standards and approaches with the DPP system when a product will be established in the market. And this means, for instance, the EPCIS is not part of our standard because this is for traceability and event handling and so on. Yeah, this is part of the product-specific regulations and implementation acts, because you can imagine there exist, let me say, event-based ecosystems, but there exist others too. We are dealing with the let me say approach of having a coexistence of standards. So of course,
Yes.
GS1 standards are part in the ISO family, for instance, 5509.
Yes.
So for sure, we are foreseeing preferred the standards from ISO and IEC for sure. So,
Yes. Yes.
because they're
Okay.
mature, and we have to do this because this kind of standards are already in a market. So, and we don't like to oblige the companies to change without need.
Yes. Yes.
So, and
Yes.
but at the same
Yeah.
time, we have different other standards in the market already for the unique identifiers and all these things. So, and this is at least the major challenge at the same time, but our objective in JTC 24 to allow these standards in the same and an interoperable way. Yeah, and you can imagine this is a big, let me say, arena for fightings.
Oh, yes,
Yes,
I can imagine.
but anyhow, I can say for a lot of things, this work is working well. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yes.
There is a lot of business, let me say, impact for all the partners there.
Yeah.
Anyhow, we are going for having a solution for that, and it seems that we are in the right direction with that. So, but anyhow, in our JTC 24, we are not dealing with the issue of tracing tools, which is used with the EPCIS, which has a event handling approach.
Yes.
But there exist other
Yes.
business environments. They do not have events. They have other items how to perform the upstream considerations and monitoring and so on. So, but this is
Yes.
another game. We are not discussing this because we know there has to come at least other standards from that perspective, because we are trying to be as small as possible for standardization. And this is at least a system where companies have to publish their passport data. So we try to keep it as small as possible. And this is a difference maybe to other approaches today. They're putting everything together in one system and then just having one scenario in mind. And even
Yes.
by application for others, the costs come around the corner. And this we would like to avoid. And I think this was foreseen even by these bureaucrats like European Commission already a very long time ago. So I'm
Yes.
quite happy that they had this view on that. Yeah.
So the question is, 3 songs that have meaning to you. Were you able to think about that? I'd be interested in what you chose.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because I have a very diverse flavor in music. It's really
All right.
from classical to but anyhow, it's quite diverse. So, for instance, I like opera. And when I was young, let me say between 14 and 18, I were a compulsory in our opera house. So,
Oh,
and this was quite exciting for me. Yeah, to have free access to all the parts. I was present there, and at the end, this was one
and
part.
so I didn't quite understand. So you had free access to the
To our
shows at the
opera
opera
house in my
house?
hometown, because
Yes.
I was working as a child between 14 and 18 as I don't know how to tell in English, compulsory. This means the ones in an opera part which are not doing anything, can do everything but not talk and not sing. Yeah, this is these.
That's amazing. I did the same thing, not in opera, but at a local theater. I was in Shakespeare, and it was an amazing experience.
Yeah,
I can completely
it
relate to what
was
you're
really
describing.
nice.
Yeah.
So and I really enjoyed this. So I learned classical music from Mozart,
Uh-huh.
Beethoven, all these really classical classicals. Yeah. So, but of course, I like all the modern ones. I have 2 childs. They are like very much independent music, indie.
Mhm.
So I learned from that. Yeah. So every time when I meet my both daughters,
Uh-huh.
I learn more about their flavor of music. So this I like as well.
That's wonderful.
But anyhow, I don't know why, but I really like the very popular ones. So what is
Okay.
currently I can listen 5 times in a row is Gracie Abrams. Is that so true? She's so amazing, and I like this music so much. As I mentioned to you, I can repeat 5 times the same song. So
Amazing. It's
really
like
amazing.
meditation almost.
Yes, it's so nice, and it is both. It is music, but as well the content. It's so
Okay.
amazing. And on the other hand, Gracie Abrams is very new, at least for me.
Yes.
But
And me. I don't. I'm going to check her out. But
yeah, so I think she is in Canadian. I don't know, but this is
okay.
and of course, in our age, when I was, let me say, between 14, 18, I was really behind Madonna. Yeah. So my favorite until today is Like a Prayer.
Amazing. Amazing. I'm with you. I'm with you on that as well.
And of course, it is on the one hand, it is so popular. Yeah. And on the other hand, Madonna was always seen, oh, she cannot sing, and everything is wrong, and she's too much behind the commercial things and all these. But at the
Yes.
end, I like this music. I could not
Oh,
go away from that.
I agree. I agree. And I So I'll interrupt you briefly to tell my own Madonna story. So probably the best job I've ever had, and I've really enjoyed almost all of my jobs, was I was the director of the college radio station.
Oh.
Back in this was back in probably like 1982, something like that. And what an amazing job. It was such a great mixture of the technical. I worked with electrical engineers on the studio and we had a very elaborate antenna system due to British Home Office laws. But also working with the DJs, and I had my own show, and they had the jazz guy, the heavy metal guy, all sorts of new wave, and the wonderful thing was the college gave us money to run the station. That was my job, to get the money. The other wonderful thing was that the record companies in those days, they were breaking these new artists, and this was in the days of vinyl. And so we would get these vinyl records with just a white label, and it had a 1 on one side and a 2 on the other. So these were very rare, the very first pressings from these new artists that no one had ever heard of. And one of those new artists that no one had ever heard of was Madonna. And it was like a virgin and all these things, and we would play them, and surprise, surprise, those records disappeared. Someone stole them, because they must have been worth a fortune. But it was a beautiful memory, and so your memory of Madonna and my memory of Madonna, I think, probably
because
related
82 it was really
way.
the beginning. Yes.
Yes.
So,
yes. Yeah.
Because I grew up in the other part of Germany, in the eastern part. So
Okay.
we got this, that we say, new music a little bit later. Of course, we could listen to Western music radio stations. But anyhow, for me, Madonna starts in 80, 84, something like that.
That's interesting. So you were talking about sort of a certain region in Germany and the timing of music. I am at the moment, I'm in a deep Beatles deep dive. There's an amazing book about the relationship between the love affair between John and Paul. So it's a really fabulous book, and it dissects the music, but it also tells the history of their time in Hamburg, and how that was really the fire that welded them together and turned them from an average group to an amazing group, in my opinion. So I've been thinking about Germany and my own trips to Hamburg, and what it must have been like for them in those days. Obviously the world was very different. But,
that's quite nice, because recently I visited my larger daughter to her town where she is performing her study. And there is a very, very large Beatles museum.
Oh.
And we went into this museum. It was amazing. It's a really large one. They claim this is the largest Beatles music all over the world, but I do not believe. But anyhow, it was quite nice. And you could make nice photos, because they had on one wall these very famous picture where all four are running across the street in Liverpool, where the I don't know, the zebra stripes and so on, and
the zebra crossing, right?
Yes, the zebra crossing, and this is organized in a way in this museum that you can take the role of George, for instance, and you hide George, and you are there, and then it looks like that you are in a row with the other three. Yeah,
I love this.
So I have some pictures of that for me, where I am in the 60s.
Would you, if you would send that, we need a photograph to go of you to go with the episode.
I have it on my mobile phone, of course.
It's like a headshot. So if you could send it to me, that would be great. We'll use that one instead of the normal boring headshot that everyone else gets.
And
that would be very cool.
This is a nice museum. They have a puzzle there. You can perform a puzzle with 1,000 pieces, and this is about all their record covers they had. Yeah.
Oh, amazing!
And my kids and me, we like to perform puzzles to play with puzzles. So we thought, okay, let's start with that. Yeah, and we puzzled, we came not to an end. And then there was a time over, and we said, okay, we have to go. Yeah. And immediately, one week after, I bought the puzzle. Yeah, with exactly this puzzle we didn't finish, and I took both of my daughters to say, okay, no, let's perform the complete this puzzle. Yeah.
Yes.
So, and this is one of our let me say nicest activities together with my kids. Yeah, to be with
Fabulous.
them. And the funny thing is, I'm the old daddy. Yeah. So when we started with the puzzle, you have always two sides, the back cover and the front cover, and on the front cover there's a picture. Yeah, this is your at least your master.
Mm-hmm.
So, and my kids just take in and try to sort everything, and they use the front cover for sorting the puzzles. And I claimed, hey, I need this front cover in order to see what I have to do for puzzling. And they said, oh, this is so boring. You don't need this.
Oh my goodness. I can't imagine.
Of 10 minutes with my smallest daughter, convince her, hey, I'm the old daddy. If I would like to play with you, I need this front cover. They say, Daddy, take this away from us. We would like to use this without any master. And so we performed the puzzle. Daddy had done everything with the master picture, and kids had done without.
Incredible. Well, I imagine the white album must have presented some problems because all the pieces would look the same on the white album. But
it's really amazing. But they have a view on structure, pieces, and all these things, and even the color. So they have a view on that. They have they can anticipate how this fits together much better than me. So I'm the old one. So.
Incredible.
It was really, this is my last experiences with the Beatles.
Very good. Well, Thomas, this has been amazing. I'm very excited by the work that you're doing. I think it's going to be good for the planet. I think it's going to be good for business, and I think it's going to be good for people as well. And, there's some amazing technologies that are coming, AI and new auto ID technologies. And this is a great platform for all of those things to build on. So thank you very much for helping to educate and share with us what's going on in this area.
Yeah, thank you so much for having this opportunity, because this is my first podcast interview.
Okay, well, I am very privileged, very privileged. All right, so that was the conversation. I think one of our best. Hopefully you enjoyed it, found it useful. If you did, please do tell other people about it. We don't do advertising. This show is probably as niche and as specialist as you can possibly get. So we rely on people telling their colleagues, friends about it. And, our goal is to help move things forward and help people get up to speed. And you can be part of that if you recommend it, rate it, share the information about the show. So please do that. One of the things that I've started doing at the end of these shows is something that I picked up from Wired magazine decades ago. When the magazine first came out, they used to have a little section inside the front page that said, this is the music that we were listening to when we wrote this edition of that wonderful magazine. You'll see an episode behind me on the wall, the one with the red one next to the Saturn V rocket. It's got HAL on it, and I've learned a lot from Wired magazine. The music thing, I'm going to continue that tradition. So what have I been listening to since we last saw each other? I've been listening to this album, Roxy Music, Siren. It's got a picture of Jerry Hall, who was a famous model way back when, Mick Jagger's wife. And that concept of having a beautiful woman on the front of the cover was part of Roxy Music's signature. In fact, into vinyl, I went to buy another one of their albums not long ago, Country Life, and I couldn't buy it because the picture on the front of these two ladies was just too provocative. And I'm like, this is too embarrassing. Which is a shame because it's a great album. Country Life, Sirens, Roxy Music. It's been a while since we had one of these podcasts, so I'm going to include another set of music I've been listening to. I mentioned it in the conversation with Thomas, but I wanted to tell you about the Beatles music I've been listening to, and it's all been driven by this amazing book. I'm listening to the audio book. It's called John and Paul, A Life Story in Songs by Ian Leslie, and it's probably one of the best books I have ever consumed about music, and it gives you some incredible insight to the music of the Beatles. And so I've been going back right from the beginning through to the end and listening to that music. So that's it. A long episode, but hopefully a worthwhile one. I want to thank Aaron for doing the editing. I want to thank Williot for sponsoring the podcast. To be frank, I'm not sure how long they will continue to sponsor it. So if you're a marketing person or a leader at a technology company that wants to sponsor this podcast, it doesn't cost a lot. We just have to pay the costs of the production. And so get in touch with me, steve@statler.com. If you are interested in that sponsorship of the show. I look forward to seeing you next time. After this episode, we've got another really good episode with an amazing female entrepreneur who's involved end-to-end in seafood life cycle. So she actually owns a fish farm, which is running off sea. She runs a restaurant, and she runs a technology company that tracks food from farm to fork or plate using digital product passports. So we have some consistency there. I do want to thank you for listening to the end. You're rare and unusual, but not on your own. So thanks for listening, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching this episode of the Mr. Beacon Ambient IoT podcast here on YouTube. You can listen to this episode on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you enjoyed it, please like and share this video. And be sure to subscribe for more videos. For more information about Williot, Ambient IoT, and IoT Pixels, head over to williot.com.